moment, when the cranberry sauce hit the wall. It splattered like a crime scene dripping down my parents' beige dining room wall as the silence descended. Cassidy was standing chest, heaving, eyes wild with rage, pointing a shaking finger at me across our family's Thanksgiving table. $8 million. $8 million. And you've been pretending to be normal this whole time. The turkey was getting cold, the stuffing forgotten, as my sister continued her meltdown. My father sat frozen, fork suspended midair, literally unable to speak. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. And me, I felt 29 years of being the forgotten daughter crystallize into one perfect moment of vindication and heartbreak as my family finally saw me for the first time. Growing up in our modest suburban home in Pennsylvania, I learned early that Cassidy was the sun around which our family orbited. 3 years older than me, she was blessed with our mother's blonde hair and our father's charming smile. I was the quiet, bookish one with mousy brown hair who blended into the background of family photos, when I was included at all. I was 5 when I first noticed something was wrong. It was Cassidy's 8th birthday, and our parents had transformed the backyard into a carnival complete with a hired clown and pony rides. 30 kids from her class came, and my parents beamed as she opened present after present. A month later, when my birthday arrived, Mom made a simple cake, and Dad was working late. "We can't do big parties for everyone," Frankie, Mom explained. "We already spent our budget on Cassidy's." This became our family pattern. Cassidy's dance recitals were major events requiring new outfits and bouquets. When I won the spelling bee in 4th grade, neither parent could attend because Cassidy needed a ride to soccer practice. The trophy sat unacknowledged on my desk for weeks, until I finally tucked it into my closet. Christmas mornings were perhaps the most painful. Cassidy would unwrap designer clothes, electronic gadgets, and whatever toy was trending that year. My pile was always smaller, practical items like socks, school supplies, and books from the discount shelf. One year when I was 12, I received a hand-me-down coat that had been Cassidy's while she opened a brand new laptop. "Cassidy needs it for school projects," Dad explained when he saw my face. "You're still young. Your time will come." But my time never came. When I brought home straight, as my father would nod distractedly. When Cassidy brought home C's, there were celebrations for her improvement. Mom constantly compared us. "Why can't you be outgoing like your sister, or Cassidy makes friends so easily, Frankie? He should try harder." I learned to stop asking for attention. Instead, I poured myself into books about business and finance, fascinated by stories of self-made people. I started babysitting at 12, earlier than most kids were allowed, saving every dollar. By 16, I had several regular weekend jobs, from tutoring number students to helping at the local library. My parents barely noticed my growing independence. They were too busy managing Cassidy's busy social calendar and soothing her frequent emotional storms. When she didn't make cheerleading captain, Dad took her shopping to cheer her up. When she lost her third part-time job for showing up late, Mom made excuses about how sensitive she was. I never confronted them about their favoritism. Not when Dad missed my high school honor society induction to attend Cassidy's boyfriend drama. Not when Mom forgot to take me shopping for prom but spent weeks helping Cassidy prepare for hers. Not even when my graduation dinner was cut short because Cassidy called with car trouble. Instead, I channeled every slight into quiet determination. While my family wasn't looking, I was building something they couldn't see yet. An unwavering belief in myself and my abilities. I was learning that the validation I craved wouldn't come from them, so I would need to find it elsewhere. What no one realized was that their neglect was forging something in me that would have been impossible otherwise: complete self-reliance and a burning ambition that would eventually change everything. When college acceptance letters arrived, I had my pick of several good schools. My parents seemed surprised by my options, as if they hadn't noticed I'd been in the top 5% of my class. The celebration dinner was for Cassidy that night, though. She'd finally completed her associate degree after 5 years of stopping and starting. "We can help a little with tuition," my father told me. "But you'll need scholarships and loans for the rest. College is expensive these days." I didn't argue, even though they'd paid for Cassidy's multiple attempts at higher education in full. Instead, I cobbled together partial scholarships, a work-study position, and a weekend job waiting tables to attend State University, with a double major in finance and business administration. College was a revelation. Away from my family's dynamics, I found people who valued my intelligence and dedication. Professors praised my work ethic and analytical skills. My roommate Taylor became the first real friend who chose me, not just tolerated me as Cassidy's little sister. "You're the most focused person I've ever met," Taylor told me once. "You're going to be someone important someday." Those words fed something starving inside me. I worked harder, taking extra classes while maintaining my jobs. I slept 4 hours most nights studying investment strategies and market trends after completing my regular coursework. While other students partied, I interned at a local financial firm for course credit and experience rather than pay. During my junior year, Cassidy dropped out of college again, this time to follow a boyfriend to Nashville, where she planned to break into the music scene. When that relationship inevitably imploded 3 months later, my parents sent her money to come home and paid for her apartment while she found herself. Meanwhile, I graduated summa cum laude, though only my mother attended the ceremony. Dad stayed home because Cassidy was going through a rough patch after another breakup. I accepted my diploma with Taylor's parents cheering for me in the stands, having adopted me as their honorary daughter. My first job after college was in the financial department of a mid-sized corporation in Philadelphia. The starting salary was modest, but I lived frugally, sharing an apartment with 2 other recent graduates, in a less desirable neighborhood. Every month I put 30% of my paycheck into savings and investments, starting with small, cautious moves in the market. During family dinners, my parents would vaguely ask about my job in the city before quickly turning to Cassidy's latest drama. Her new retail position. She hated the co-workers who didn't appreciate her, or her latest dating. Disaster. "Frankie's always been the study," one mom would say, as if my stability was somehow less interesting than Cassidy's chaos. "She's always been so independent." What they didn't know was that I'd started spending my evenings and weekends developing a financial consulting service for small businesses struggling with cash flow management. It began with one client, the owner of the coffee shop where I studied during college, who had mentioned his bookkeeping challenges. I offered to help organize his finances for a small fee, and the results were so impressive that he referred me to other local business owners. After 2 years at my corporate job, I was burning out from essentially working 2 full-time positions. But my side business was growing rapidly, and I was earning nearly as much from my consulting as from my day job. Still, I hesitated to make the leap to full entrepreneurship. Then came the turning point. I had developed a proprietary software tool to help my clients visualize their cash flow and make better financial decisions. It was nothing fancy. Just something I'd taught myself to code to make my consulting work more efficient. One of my clients mentioned it to her brother-in-law, who happened to be the CEO of a regional banking software company. He called me directly asking for a demonstration. 2 weeks later, he offered to license my software for an amount that made me check the number of zeros twice. He also offered me a development contract to refine it for their institutional clients. I gave notice at my corporate job the next day. When I called my parents to share my decision to start my own business, my father's response was predictable. "Is that really wise, Frankie? Corporate jobs have security and benefits. Cassidy just got laid off again and it's been really hard on her. He should be grateful for what you have." I mumbled something about having saved enough for a safety net, and changed the subject. What I didn't tell them was that my little software deal had just made me financially independent at 24 years old. Or that I was about to move into a better apartment and open an office downtown. Some news I was learning was better kept to myself. As my 25th birthday approached, my consulting firm had grown to include 3 employees and a roster of loyal clients. The software licensing deal had expanded to include several regional banks, and I was in talks with a major financial institution about a nationwide rollout. My personal net worth had quietly crossed the $1 million mark, a milestone I celebrated alone with an expensive bottle of champagne in my new downtown apartment. That same week I flew home for Thanksgiving. Cassidy had just moved back in with our parents after another failed relationship left her financially strapped. She spent dinner talking about her plans to open a boutique despite having no business experience or startup capital. "Dad's going to help me with the initial investment, right, Daddy?" she said, flashing the smile that had always gotten her what she wanted. My father nodded indulgently. "We'll figure something out, Princess." Later, I overheard my mother in the kitchen. "Frankie's doing okay with that business thing of hers, but I worry. She works too hard and never seems to have fun. Not like Cassidy, she really knows how to live." I returned to Philadelphia with a strange sense of liberation. My family had no real interest in my life or success, which meant I was free from their expectations or judgments. I could build my empire in peace, without their interference or sudden interest in my finances. Over the next 3 years, my business thing expanded exponentially. My financial software platform, now called ClearFlow, gained industry recognition for its intuitive design and powerful analytical capabilities. I established a separate technology company to develop and market it while maintaining my original consulting firm. I made strategic investments in several tech startups, 2 of which were acquired by larger companies for substantial returns. By my 28th birthday, my net worth had quietly grown to $8 million. I owned a beautiful condo in the city, though I furnished it modestly and drove a reliable but unremarkable sedan. Money, I had discovered, was most valuable when it provided freedom, rather than status symbols. I dated occasionally but focused primarily on my businesses until I met Jack at a charity gala. A structural engineer with his own modest firm, he was refreshingly unimpressed by networking opportunities and spent most of the evening discussing historic bridge designs with me in a quiet corner. On our 3rd date, I cautiously explained my financial situation and was relieved when he didn't seem fazed. "That's impressive," he said simply. "You must be very good at what you do. Want to try that new Thai place on 5th Street? I heard their curry is amazing." As our relationship deepened over the next year, Jack became the only person who knew both versions of me, the successful entrepreneur and the overlooked daughter. He encouraged me to be honest with my family but didn't push when I resisted. "They've never been interested in my success before," I explained. "Why would I give them information they haven't earned? Besides, I like my privacy." The truth was more complicated. Part of me feared that revealing my success would lead to requests for money from Cassidy or my parents. Another part, the wounded child still seeking approval, worried they somehow still wouldn't be impressed. And a small, petty part of me enjoyed having this secret power they knew nothing about. My double life continued. To my family, I was still just Frankie with her small business, living a modest, unmemorable life. They rarely asked for details, so I rarely offered them. When I visited home, I wore simple clothes and left my successful CEO persona in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, Cassidy bounced between jobs and relationships, always with some new drama or crisis. My parents continued to bail her out financially and emotionally, depleting their retirement savings more than they realized. One Christmas, I overheard my father on the phone with their financial advisor, worry evident in his voice. They had refinanced their house to help Cassidy start a short-lived event planning business that had quickly failed. Now they were struggling with the increased mortgage payments. 2 weeks later, their mortgage company called to inform them that an anonymous benefactor had paid off their loan in full. My father mentioned it at our next family dinner, completely unaware that I was responsible. "Must have been a mistake," he concluded. "But we confirmed it's legitimate. Someone paid it off, and the house is free and clear now." Cassidy immediately suggested it might be one of her ex-boyfriends who still carried a torch for her. My mother wondered if it was a wealthy former client of my father's accounting practice. No one considered that it might be me. As Jack and I grew more serious discussing marriage and our future, I found myself increasingly uncomfortable with my compartmentalized life. He never pressured me, but his transparent relationship with his own family highlighted the web of deception I'd created with mine. "They don't know me," I told him during one discussion. "The real me. They never have." "Maybe that's because you never gave them the chance," he suggested gently. "People can surprise you if you let them." I wasn't convinced, but the seed was planted. As another Thanksgiving approached, I found myself wondering what would happen if I finally stepped fully into my truth with my family. What I couldn't have anticipated was that the decision would be made for me in the most dramatic way possible. Jack proposed on a crisp October evening with a simple solitaire diamond that perfectly matched my understated style. As we discussed wedding plans, the question of family inevitably arose. "I think it's time, Frankie," Jack said, his voice gentle but firm. "If we're starting our own family, you need to be honest with yours. You can't keep living this double life." I knew he was right. The compartmentalization that had once felt protective now felt like a prison. More importantly, I was tired of diminishing my accomplishments around my family. I deserved to be seen. "I'll tell them at Thanksgiving," I promised. "The whole truth." As the holiday approached, my anxiety grew. I rehearsed different versions of my revelation, none of which felt right. How do you tell your family that you've been hiding your success from them for years? That you're actually wealthy beyond their imagination? That their overlooked daughter had built something remarkable while they weren't paying attention? A week before Thanksgiving, my world shifted unexpectedly. Clearflow, my financial software company, was featured in Business Innovators magazine as part of their 30 Under 30 profile. The article was surprisingly detailed, mentioning my company's valuation, my ownership stake, and even including a professional photo of me in my executive office. It described me as a financial technology wonderkind, and quoted a venture capitalist estimating my personal net worth at north of $8 million. I hadn't sought the publicity. One of my board members had nominated me for the recognition without telling me. When the journalist called for an interview, I'd simply answered her questions honestly, not realizing how prominently the feature would be displayed. The morning the magazine hit newsstands, I received a cryptic text from my mother. "Looking forward to seeing you at Thanksgiving. Dad and I are so proud of all you've accomplished." It was such an uncharacteristic message that I immediately called her, but the conversation was oddly strained. She asked vague questions about how business was going but didn't mention the article. When I asked directly if something had happened, she laughed nervously and said everything was fine. Jack and I arrived at my parents' house on Thanksgiving Day to find an atmosphere thick with tension. My mother greeted me with unusual enthusiasm, complimenting my coat and asking detailed questions about our drive from Philadelphia. My father hugged me longer than usual, patting my back awkwardly. "My successful daughter," he said with a strange emphasis, "always knew you were smart." The house looked the same as always. Modest and comfortable, with the same furniture they'd had since I was a child. The dining room was set with the good china they'd used for special occasions, and the air was filled with the familiar scents of turkey and pumpkin pie. "Where's Cassidy?" I asked as we settled in the living room. "Running late as usual," my mother said with a forced smile. "She texted that she's on her way." As we made awkward small talk, I noticed my parents exchanging glances whenever I spoke about work. Jack squeezed my hand supportively, sensing the undercurrents. I was about to address the elephant in the room when the front door banged open. Cassidy swept in, 32 years old but dressed like a college student in tight jeans and an oversized sweater. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her movements jerky as she air-kissed our mother and nodded curtly to Jack and me. "Sorry I'm late," she said, though she clearly wasn't. Traffic was a nightmare. Throughout the afternoon I caught Cassidy staring at me with an unfamiliar intensity. She kept checking her phone, scrolling with increasing agitation. Whenever our parents asked me about work, she would interrupt with her own stories or abruptly change the subject. As we finally sat down for dinner, the tension in the room was palpable. Dad carved the turkey with methodical precision, while Mom fussed with the side dishes. Jack attempted to lighten the mood with stories about his latest bridge restoration project, but his words fell flat in the strained atmosphere. Halfway through the meal, I noticed Cassidy's phone propped against her water glass, the screen displaying what looked like the Business Innovators website. She was barely touching her food, her jaw clenched as she scrolled through what I realized with a sinking feeling was that article about me. I was about to excuse myself to the bathroom to collect my thoughts, when Cassidy suddenly looked up from her phone, her expression twisted with anger. "So, Frankie," she said, her voice cutting through the awkward dinner table conversation. "I've been doing some research about you today. Very interesting reading." Every head at the table turned toward her. My father paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. "Is there something you want to ask me, Cassidy?" I said quietly, my heart pounding. $8 million, she said, her voice rising. 8 million. Is that really what you're worth? Or is that an underestimate? And just like that, the moment I'd both feared and secretly anticipated for years had arrived. But instead of the controlled revelation I'd planned, I was watching my sister spiraling into what would soon become a spectacular meltdown with my shell-shocked parents caught in the crossfire. "Is it true?" Cassidy demanded, her voice cutting through the silence that had fallen over the dining room. She held up her phone, displaying the Business Innovators article with my photo prominently featured. "Are you secretly some millionaire tech genius?" All eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath and set my napkin beside my plate. "Yes," I said simply. "I founded 2 successful companies and made some good investments. The article is essentially accurate. The simplicity of my admission seemed to infuriate Cassidy further. Her face flushed deep red. All this time, she sputtered. All this time you've been pretending to be ordinary. Coming home in your Target clothes and your sensible car talking about your small business like you're struggling like the rest of us. I never said I was struggling, I replied evenly. I just didn't elaborate on my success. Why? My mother finally found her voice. Why wouldn't you tell us, Frankie? Before I could answer, Cassidy slammed her hand on the table, making the dishes jump. Because she's selfish. She wanted to hoard all her precious money while watching me struggle. While watching Mom and Dad worry about retirement. She probably got some sick pleasure out of it. Jack straightened beside me. That's completely unfair. Frankie worked incredibly hard for everything she's achieved with very little support from. Stay out of this. Cassidy snapped at him before turning back to me. Did you enjoy it? Frankie watching me bounce from one failed job to another while you were sitting on millions? Was it funny when I couldn't make rent last year and had to move back home? Did you laugh about poor pathetic Cassidy while lounging in your luxury condo? I never thought of you that way, I said, keeping my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. My financial situation had nothing to do with you. Everything has to do with me, Cassidy shouted, rising from her chair. We're family. Family is supposed to help each other. My father finally spoke, his voice uncharacteristically timid. Cassidy, please calm down. I'm sure Frankie had her reasons. Don't defend her, Cassidy whirled on him. She let you refinance the house for my business, when she could have just written a check. She watched you stress about bills and did nothing. I felt a flash of anger. That's not true. Who do you think paid off your mortgage last year? My parents froze, identical expressions of shock on their faces. That was you, my father whispered. Yes, I said. It was me. I didn't want recognition. I just wanted to help. Oh, how noble, Cassidy's voice dripped with sarcasm. Saint Frankie secretly saving the day while pretending to be just like us common folk. Did it make you feel powerful having that kind of control over our lives? Cassidy, that's enough, my mother said weakly. It's not nearly enough. Cassidy grabbed her wine glass and drained it in one gulp. Do you have any idea what my life has been like? The constant struggle, the humiliation of failure after failure, while perfect Frankie was building her empire? Perfect, I echoed, finally allowing my own anger to show. Is that really how you see our family dynamic, Cassidy? Because from where I've been standing for 29 years, you were the golden child who could do no wrong. Who got every advantage, every opportunity, every ounce of attention while I was barely an afterthought. That's ridiculous, my mother protested. We never treated you differently. Jack made a small sound of disbelief beside me, but I barely registered it. Decades of suppressed feelings were rising to the surface. Mom, you forgot my 16th birthday. Dad missed my college graduation because Cassidy had a breakup. Neither of you came to my business launch. But you took a week off work to help Cassidy move to Nashville for a guy she'd known for 3 months. We were just supporting her through a difficult time, my father said defensively. And when was I ever supported through my difficult times? I asked quietly. Cassidy wasn't listening. She'd moved from wine to the harder stuff, pouring herself a large measure of whiskey from the sideboard. You know what? It doesn't even matter anymore, she said, her words slightly slurred. Because now Big Sister Frankie is going to solve all our problems with her. Millions, right? You're going to invest in my new business idea. It's going to be amazing, a wellness center with retail and spa services. I'm not giving you money without a solid business plan, I said firmly. Cassidy's face contorted with rage. See? She doesn't want to hurt me. After everything I've been through. After all my struggles. What struggles exactly? Jack asked, his patience visibly wearing thin. From what Frankie's told me, you've had every advantage. You don't know anything about me, Cassidy shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at him. I have had genuine hardships. Real problems that money would solve. Like what I challenged. Like my debt, I'm drowning in credit card bills and the bank won't give me any more loans. Because you've never repaid the previous loans, my father said, quietly surprising me by standing his ground. You're one to talk. Cassidy sneered at him. You wouldn't even have a house if it wasn't for your precious Frankie. That's unfair, Cassidy. My mother interjected. Your father has always done his best. His best wasn't good enough. Cassidy shouted, tears now streaming down her face. None of us was good enough. And now little Miss Perfect is a secret millionaire who's been laughing at us all behind our backs. I never laughed at anyone, I said firmly. And I worked for everything I have. Oh please, you had advantages too, your precious scholarships, and I earned those scholarships, I interrupted. And then I worked 30 hours a week while carrying a full course load to pay for the rest. What exactly did you do with the full ride Mom and Dad gave you? Cassidy's face twisted with rage. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? I never said that. You didn't have to say it. She grabbed the cranberry sauce bowl and hurled it against the wall where it shattered in a spectacular red splash. You've always thought it. Poor little overlooked Frankie's so much smarter and better than everyone else. My father stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. Cassidy Elizabeth. That's enough. Oh, now you stand up to me, she laughed bitterly. After years of giving me everything I wanted, after remortgaging your house to fund my business idea that I knew would probably fail. The room went completely silent. My mother's face drained of color. What did you just say? She whispered. Cassidy's eyes widened as she realized what she'd admitted. She backpedaled quickly. I didn't mean it like that. I was just stressed and you knew your business would fail. My father's voice was barely audible. We put our retirement on the line because he said it was a sure thing. Nothing's a sure thing in business, Cassidy mumbled, avoiding his eyes. It might have worked if what I'd asked, if you'd had any experience, any education in business management, any plan beyond a vague concept. At least I had dreams, Cassidy shouted, tears streaming down her face now. At least I wanted more than a boring corporate existence. At least I lived. And who funded that living? I stood up now, too unable to contain my anger any longer. Who paid for your adventures and your failures and your dreams? Not you. Mom and Dad sacrificed everything for you and you knew you were taking advantage of them. That's not fair. I was going to pay them back when? What? When your next half-baked scheme magically succeeded despite your complete lack of effort or planning. When someone handed you the easy life you've always felt entitled to. Cassidy lunged toward me, but Jack stepped between us. She stumbled backward, knocking over a side table and sending my mother's cherished vase crashing to the floor. This is your fault, she screamed at me as my mother rushed to salvage the broken pieces. Everything was fine until you showed up with your millions and your perfect boyfriend and your success. You've ruined everything. With that final accusation, she stormed out of the dining room. Moments later we heard the front door slam, followed by the screech of tires as she drove away. The silence she left behind was deafening. My father stood motionless, staring at the cranberry sauce dripping down the wall. My mother knelt on the floor, quietly crying as she gathered broken ceramic shards. Jack moved to help her, gently taking the sharp pieces from her trembling hands. I remained standing, suddenly aware that nothing in my family would ever be the same again. The carefully constructed illusions we'd all been living with had shattered even more completely than that vase, leaving us to figure out what, if anything, could be salvaged from the wreckage of our Thanksgiving dinner. After Cassidy's dramatic exit, we moved like sleepwalkers, mechanically clearing the room and dinner from the table. No one spoke as Jack wiped cranberry sauce from the wall, and I swept up the broken vase. My mother disappeared upstairs, and my father retreated to his study. Jack touched my arm gently. Do you want me to give you some privacy with your parents? I nodded gratefully. Maybe go to that coffee shop down the street. I'll text you when we've talked. After he left, I stood in the hallway between my father's study and the staircase leading to my parents' bedroom, uncertain which parent to approach first. The decision was made for me when my father appeared in the study doorway, looking suddenly old and defeated. We should talk, he said, simply gesturing me inside. His study had always been a sacred space filled with accounting books and family photos, most featuring Cassidy's smiling face at various ages. I sat in the leather visitor's chair while he settled heavily behind his desk, more from habit than any desire to maintain authority, I suspected. Is it true what Cassidy said? He asked after a long silence. About knowing her business would likely fail. I can't speak to what Cassidy knew or didn't know, I said carefully. But her business plan had fundamental flaws that any experienced entrepreneur would have recognized immediately. He rubbed his face wearily. Why didn't he say anything? The question ignited a spark of anger I thought had burned out. When would I have said something, Dad? When you announced your decision after it was already made, or during one of the many consultations with me that never happened? My father flinched. We didn't think you'd be interested in Cassidy's business ventures. You didn't think of me at all, I said quietly. That's the truth, isn't it? I wasn't even a factor in the equation. He opened his mouth as if to deny it, then closed it again, his shoulders slumping. I don't know what to say that wouldn't sound like an excuse. Try honesty, I suggested. After 29 years, I think I've earned that much. He stared at the desktop for several long moments before finally meeting my eyes. You're right. We didn't think of consulting you. Not because we didn't respect your opinion, but because... He struggled visibly. Because we've grown so used to you not needing us, that sometimes we forget to include you at all. I did need you, I said, my voice catching. Every child needs their parents, Dad. I just learned to hide it because my needs always came second to Cassidy's. He winced. We never meant to make you feel that way. But I did feel that way. Every day for as long as I can remember. A heavy silence fell between us, broken wholly by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. My mother appeared in the doorway, her eyes red but her composure restored. I think I need to be part of this conversation, she said, pulling up another chair. For the next hour we talked more honestly than we ever had before. I described birthdays and Christmases from my perspective, achievements that went uncelebrated, and the gradual realization that I would always be secondary in their attention. My parents listened without interrupting, occasional tears sliding down my mother's cheeks. Why didn't you ever say anything? She finally asked. Would it have made a difference? I countered. Or would you have told me I was being too sensitive, too needy, too much like Cassidy? My mother flinched at the comparison. We never meant to hurt you, Frankie. We just... Cassidy always seemed to need so much more. And I made it easy for you by needing less, I acknowledged. But that wasn't fair to any of us. My father cleared his throat. About the mortgage. He began awkwardly. I don't regret paying it off, I said firmly. But I wish you had felt you could come to me directly instead of struggling alone. Pride, he admitted. And shame. What kind of father asks his daughter for financial help? The kind he supported her through college and gave her the foundation to succeed, I said gently. It shouldn't have been a one-way street, Dad. He nodded, blinking rapidly. Thank you. Not just for the house, but for forcing us to have this conversation. It's long overdue. My mother reached for my hand across the desk. I need to tell you something that might help explain some things, though it doesn't excuse them. She took a deep breath before continuing. When I was 9, my older sister died in an accident. She was 12, blonde and beautiful like Cassidy. My parents never recovered from the loss. After that, nothing I did could fill the hole she left. I was always the lesser daughter, the replacement that wasn't quite good enough. Her revelations stunned me into silence. In all our years together, she had never mentioned having a sister. When Cassidy was born, she continued, she looked so much like my sister, that sometimes it took my breath away. And I think I unconsciously tried to give her the love and attention I never got. I overcompensated. And in doing so, I repeated the pattern with you that hurt me so deeply as a child. Mom, I whispered, my anger giving way to a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't immediately identify. It doesn't excuse what we did, she said firmly. But I want you to know it wasn't because we loved you less or valued you less. We got caught in patterns we didn't even recognize until tonight. My father reached across the desk to take both our hands, creating a circle. I enabled it too. Cassidy's needs were always so loud, so immediate. Your independence made it easy to focus on her and assume you were fine. That was our failure, not yours. The conversation continued long into the evening, painful but necessary. We talked about Cassidy, about my companies, about Jack and our engagement. For perhaps the first time, my parents asked questions and genuinely listened to the answers. There were moments of tension and tears, but also unexpected laughter, as I shared stories of my early entrepreneurial attempts. Around midnight, as our conversation finally wound down, my father asked the question I'd been expecting. What happens now? With Cassidy, I mean. I considered carefully before answering. I'm willing to help her, but not unconditionally. not in ways that enable destructive patterns or dependency. She needs professional help, my mother acknowledged, surprising me with her clarity. Financial counseling at minimum, possibly therapy. I can arrange both, I offered. But she has to want to change. I can't force that. My father nodded slowly. And us? Where do we go from here? I thought about Jack waiting patiently at the coffee shop, about the life we were building together, and about the broken family dynamics that had shaped me for better and worse. We start over, I said finally. Not forgetting the past, but not held prisoner by it either. We try to build something healthier, with honest communication and realistic expectations. I'd like that, my mother said softly. Very much. As I texted Jack to come back to the house, I felt something shift within me. Not the neat resolution of a fairy tale ending, but the bittersweet beginning of a more authentic relationship with my family. The road ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time I believed we might navigate them together, eyes open to both our limitations and our possibilities. 3 months after the Thanksgiving meltdown, I stood in my parents' freshly painted living room watching as my father carefully hung a family portrait. It wasn't an old photo but a new one taken just weeks ago. All of us together with genuine smiles that reached our eyes. A little to the left, Dad, I suggested, and he adjusted accordingly. Perfect, my mother said, coming in with a tray of coffee. The first of many new memories. The past months had brought dramatic changes to our family dynamics. After Cassidy's explosive exit from Thanksgiving dinner, she had disappeared for nearly 2 weeks, ignoring calls and texts from all of us. When she finally resurfaced, it was with a tearful late-night call to our parents, who immediately called me. She's ready to talk, my mother had said. Really talk? Are you willing to listen? The subsequent meeting at a neutral coffee shop had been tense but productive. Cassidy, subdued and visibly exhausted, had offered no excuses for her behavior. I've been awful, she'd admitted, staring into her untouched latte. To all of you, but especially to you, Frankie. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say it out loud. Rather than offering immediate absolution, I had proposed a path forward. I would establish a family trust to help with her debts and our parents' retirement, but with conditions. Cassidy would need to complete financial counseling and commit to therapy. My parents would need to attend family counseling sessions with both of us. This isn't punishment, I'd explained. It's an investment in our future as a family. To my surprise, they had all agreed. More surprisingly, they had followed through. Now, 3 months later, the changes were subtle but significant. My father had taken a genuine interest in my companies, not for financial gain, but to understand the world I'd built. My mother had started sending me articles about women in business, her way of showing support for the path I'd chosen. And Cassidy was doing the hard work of confronting her entitlement and insecurity. More coffee, Frankie, my mother offered, breaking my reverie. Please, I smiled, accepting the cup. Is Jack still helping Dad with the garage shows? They're bonding over power tools, she confirmed with a small smile. Your father never had a son-in-law before. He's rather enjoying it. The doorbell rang and my mother's eyes brightened. That must be Cassidy. She's bringing dessert. The Cassidy who entered moments later was noticeably different from the woman who had thrown cranberry sauce at Thanksgiving. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes practical rather than flashy. She carried a bakery box with careful concentration. I brought cheesecake, she announced, setting it on the coffee table. From that place you mentioned liking Frankie. The gesture wasn't grand, but it represented something significant. Cassidy remembering someone else's preference and acting on it. Thank you, I said simply. That was thoughtful. She accepted the compliment with a quick nod, then glanced at the new family portrait. That turned out really well. First time we've all genuinely smiled in a photo together, my mother observed. Maybe not the last, Cassidy said tentatively. We moved to the dining room for lunch, the same table that had witnessed so much drama months before. Jack and my father joined us, discussing the merits of different types of wood for shelving. The conversation flowed more naturally than it ever had in our family gatherings, with everyone given space to speak and be heard. During dessert, Cassidy cleared her throat nervously. I have some news, she announced. I got a job. A real one with benefits and everything. That's wonderful, my mother exclaimed. Where? It's an administrative position at Valley Community College, Cassidy explained. Nothing glamorous but stable. And they offer free classes to employees, so I'm going to finally finish my degree in business administration," she added with a significant glance at me. "I'm proud of you," I said sincerely. "That's a solid plan. My therapist helped me realize I need to build something real, instead of chasing get-rich-quick schemes," she admitted. "It's humbling to start at the bottom at 32, but better late than never, right?" "Exactly right," my father affirmed. "And we're here to support you, appropriately this time." The significance of his qualifier wasn't lost on any of us. My parents were learning new patterns too, offering encouragement without enabling dependency. After lunch, while everyone else cleaned up, Jack pulled me aside onto the back porch. The February air was crisp, but the sky was clear and promising. So he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind, "Should we tell them our news?" My hand drifted unconsciously to my stomach, still flat but harboring our 4-week secret. "Are you ready for the fuss? Mom's gonna start knitting baby blankets immediately." He laughed softly. "I think I can handle it. The question is, are you ready?" I considered the complex journey that had brought us to this moment. The hurt child who had built walls to protect herself. The ambitious woman who had created success in the shadow of neglect. The adult learning that vulnerability could be strength, not weakness. Yes, I decided. I'm ready. This baby deserves grandparents who can love them openly. And I want to give our child what I didn't have. A family where everyone is seen and valued for exactly who they are. When we shared our news, the joy was unrestrained, and for the first time in my memory, equally directed toward both Jack and me. My mother did indeed immediately start planning baby projects, while my father spoke emotionally about becoming a grandfather. Even Cassidy's congratulations seemed genuinely happy without the undercurrent of jealousy that would have been inevitable before. As the afternoon waned into evening, I found myself alone with my father in his study. He was showing me old family photos I'd never seen, including several of me as a young child that had been tucked away in albums I never knew existed. "I want you to know," he said carefully, "that while we made terrible mistakes in how we showed it, we have always loved you, Frankie. Always." "I believe you," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "And I love you too, Dad. That never changed, even when it hurt." He cleared his throat, emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Your child will never doubt their worth. Not with you as their mother." "I hope not," I said softly. "I'm learning from both your mistakes and your strengths." Later that night, as Jack and I drove back to our home in Philadelphia, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for most of my life. The wounds of the past hadn't magically disappeared, but they had begun to heal, transforming into wisdom rather than bitterness. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, glancing away from the road to study my contemplative expression. "More than okay," I assured him, squeezing his hand. "I'm just thinking about how life never turns out quite how you expect. Sometimes it's better in ways you couldn't have imagined." My journey had taught me that true success isn't measured in dollars or achievements, but in the courage to be authentic and the strength to forge connections even after betrayal. The $8 million that had sparked our family crisis had never been the real issue. It was merely the catalyst that forced us to confront decades of unspoken pain and patterns. As we drove toward our future, I realized that the greatest wealth I possessed wasn't in my bank accounts or businesses, but in the hard-won wisdom that even broken relationships can be mended if there's enough love, honesty, and willingness to change. That sometimes the most powerful act isn't walking away from those who hurt you, but staying to build something new together. Something better than what came before. What about you? Have you ever discovered that someone in your life was hiding something significant from you, or have you kept an important truth from loved ones? How did the revelation impact your relationship? Comment below with your experiences. If you found value in my story, please like this video, subscribe to hear more authentic life journeys, and share with someone who might need to know they're not alone in family struggles. Thank you for listening, and remember that it's never too late to heal old wounds and create new beginnings.